broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk.
Welcome to Us versus Life. In today's video, I decided I will talk to you all about choices.
Walk it out and move mountains. And I rise like the day, I rise up.
Because I think that choices is one of the most powerful things that we were given on this earth. We all have the opportunity to choose what we want to do. Now, we know that there are consequences. There are outcomes to those choices, but still the power remains with us to make those choices. Does that make sense to anybody? We can choose to do whatever we want. The question becomes, what will we choose? And are we okay? And I think this is the important part. Are we okay with the outcome of that choice? And I guess I'd add to that is that we consider what the potential outcome would be of that choice before we made it. So let me say this again. I have a list. This is just my personal list of what I think are some of the most important things in life are. And for sure, obviously, I'm making a video about it. I think choices is up there. I'll give you another one, a precursor to a future video. And that'll be a judgment. To judge someone when none of us are in position to judge anyone, because no one is perfect, is a very powerful, as we just said, choice. No one's forcing us to do that, but oftentimes we still do it. So, let's go back to choices. What have we chosen to do, and what has been the outcome? I think so often in our lives, we have realized that life outcomes isn't necessarily what we want it to be. But the question I would have for myself, the question I have had for myself, and the question I would have for anybody is, did we consider our own choices in those outcomes? Did we have the opportunity to choose something else? I would say yes. Now, on a deeper level, I can understand someone would say, well, I wish I had help to choose a better choice, which I think is kind of the point. and 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 I think that's kind of the point in life. As a lot of us know it, it's like, yeah, I made the wrong choice, but if I had help, better help in choosing it, I would have chose better. So what that implies is that I needed help from another place, another source, because the choice that I made on my own, I'm not satisfied with. And here is where I think the dilemma arises for most of us, because we want that, we want assistance with our choices, but not a certain type of assistance. So I've talked about this in some earlier videos a little bit, and if you haven't seen them, this is your first video of mine that you have seen, I would encourage you to go back and listen to the first video that I've ever made. Possibly it will kind of lead you into this. Now, it's not all directly connected, but hopefully you can put the pieces together. And I'm not playing some game, but it's a lot of things to talk about when we talk about life. And again, if this is your first video, I would just again state that the name of this channel is Us Versus Life. The initiative here is Us Versus Life. It's where we fight for our happiness. And those words aren't just chosen for no reason. We are literally fighting for happiness, because happiness is not something that's just given. If you don't believe that or agree with that, I applaud you. But those that have had experiences that they say, yes, happiness hasn't just been given to me, then maybe you'll understand. So when it comes to choices, I want to highlight that, because I don't know that choice is put at the forefront. And if it is, put it in the comments and say, no, I've been knew that my choices, our choices, was one of the biggest, most important things in life. But for me, I didn't realize that at first. It took me a little bit to realize that choices were very powerful, and the opportunity to choose was one of the most powerful things available to me and to us, because I have nothing special that anyone else doesn't have. So if we can say to ourselves, yeah, okay, I get what you're saying about choices, that is important. I didn't think about it like that before, or I did, but then now what? If you haven't listened to this channel before, again, I would encourage you to go back and listen to some prior videos, possibly specific to this. Listen to the one about value. You can listen to multiple ones about that, because it's very important as well. One of them is, do you matter? And do you have value? It all ties together. All this stuff is connected. So when you're making your choices, if you make your choices based on your own individual perception, then that may be a point where you may consider thinking about something more than your own perception. You may find, you may find that that helps you in your choices. Because also what I talked about before, and I say that meaning what I suggested is that we consider others as we consider ourselves. Again, as we make our choices, they have to be unbiased. You consider this, what I'm saying. I've considered it. I've observed it. Again, go back to prior videos and you'll hear where I talked about the observance of others, which is exactly what I'm talking about now, which gives you a perspective. See, all these things come together. If you have an isolated perspective, a tunnel vision, and I don't mean in a negative way, but a isolated vision based on your own reality and no one else's, then your choices will be affected. But the bigger your perspective, the wider your point of view and your observations, the better your choices could be. Because the fact of the matter is, whether anyone likes it or not, you're not on this earth alone. If you want to be on this earth alone, there may be a way to accomplish that, maybe. But until you figure that out, as I talked about in relationship problems in another video, which is, if this is your first video, go back and watch that one. Or listen to it as well, I should say. Because again, what I'm showing or what I'm trying to present is that all of these things are connected. Everything's connected. All of it. And so a choice isn't just made off of one thing. If you're making your choice off of one thing, I would only suggest to you, you put your thoughts in the comments, that you're making a mistake. Life is complex. Life becomes simple when you understand how complex it is. But if you think life is simple without understanding how complex it is, it will be more complex. Life is full of choices, not stagnant choices, evolving, changing choices, many of them, hundreds, thousands, maybe even tens of thousands, depending on how long you live, maybe even hundreds of thousands, depending on how long you live, maybe even millions of choices. You see, that's the power of choice. You make them every single day, every single second. You choose something. And a choice to do nothing is a choice. And whether you're not making a choice is a choice, if you perceive it that way. If you say, I'm not even thinking about what I'm doing, I'm just existing, that is a choice. Because there are some people that choose to never just exist. Everything they do is calculated. I'm suggesting this to you to consider. So, when it comes to choices, we have an opportunity to choose how we interact with each other, which goes back to the relationships that I talked about before. And by the way, I mentioned this before. I don't do any edits. I'm not planning on doing any edits. So if you hear me have to repeat a word or stutter over a word, I don't care. I've already mentioned that. Maybe at some point I'll get better production and do edits and it'll be smoother, but I kind of like it raw and real. So that you kind of know that this is a real person. It's not some fantasy talking. This is a real person just like you. Just sharing information in hopes of helping someone. That's it. That's what this initiative is about, us versus life. Because, again, as was stated prior, we're all here together just living. And that goes back to choices. How have I chosen to deal with the others that are just here living? How have you chosen to deal with the others that are just here living? Am I biased and only thinking of myself and my choices that I've made? Have I considered how my choices would affect others? Have I done that? This is a question for myself to ponder, to think about. And then I pose that same question, those same questions to you. Have you done that? Are you potentially jaded, affected by others that you've dealt with to where you feel like I shouldn't consider others when I make my choices? Is that where you want to leave your choice? Do you want to let your choice rest on that? Do I want to let my choice rest on the fact that maybe others have made me feel a certain way, and therefore I'm only on the lookout for myself, which is a choice? Or will I continue to fight through that and say, my purpose, as I've talked about in another video, go back and listen to it on the channel, you'll hear it. My purpose doesn't just lie in me. My purpose lies and is based on helping others, which in turn helps me. My purpose can't just be based off myself. This is what I'm saying for me. You tell me what you think. Put it in the comments. My purpose has to be inclusive of others. Because if my purpose is only about me and me only, I become isolated. And if I'm isolated, I feel alone. And if I'm alone, then what's the point of existing? Because others will continue to exist around me. If you are a person that can say to themselves, I am comfortable with living the entirety of my life or the rest of my life alone, not having a relationship with anybody else, not in terms of romantically but any type of relationship, as I said in other video. If you're comfortable with that, then props to you. If that makes you happy, then do it. But I think science would show you, if you look into it, that human beings are naturally social beings. They need the interaction of someone else. Imagine being marooned on an island, stranded on an island by yourself for 3 years, just 3 years, not even your entire life. No one to talk to, no one else to exist with, just you, and if you respect it, we'll call it nature. You and nature being what the earth has produced, just you. Would you be okay with that? So if your perspective is in order, perhaps, maybe, you or me or any of us should consider, I don't want to be alone. Therefore, I need to make the choice to deal with other people. Now, in dealing with other people, are they going to 100% behave the exact way that I want them to? It's a question for me, and I would like to pose that question to you. So if I want to deal with other people, I have to respect the fact that they will not do everything the way that I want them to. That's just a part of it. So I must choose to deal with that in order to choose to deal with people. Or else I go to an island and deal with myself. Or you can do that if that is what interests you. And what I would suggest, all we have to do is just remember that in dealing with each other. I do that to you, you do that to me. You say, I realize you aren't going to behave exactly how I want you to. And then I reciprocate. In turn, I return that to you. And I say, I realize you're not going to behave exactly the way that I want you to 100% of the time. But what is more important to me is my interaction with you. Because I realize I have the perspective that no one, to my knowledge, to your knowledge, if you found different, put it in the comments. No one is going to do 100% of what you want them to do. At some point, I and you, we must make the choice whether to deal with people, to interact with people, to accept people for who they are or not. So what's the choice in between that? And again, I keep saying it, and I'm not saying it to sound, I don't know, a certain way, but I've talked about levels in prior videos. At what level are you satisfied? And is that level fair? Do you know what's fair? Do you have the perspective to gauge what's fair? Because if you don't have the perspective, your opinion of what's fair may be way egregious. If you don't have the perspective of what's fair, your opinion of what's fair may be way low. So yeah, it's a lot of choices to be made. This is just a little part of it. But what it comes down to really, what life is really seems to be based on, because the thing is, if you were on this earth by yourself, imagine that, you would probably yearn, probably, right, for people that like to go to the extreme of their thinking and go, well, I would love to be alone. You are the exception. There's an exception to every rule. There is exceptions to every rule. But I'm talking about the majority, okay? The majority of people would not enjoy a life lived alone. Is that true for you or no? Put it in the comments. If you would rather live your life alone, put it in the comments. Now have the proper perspective when you say that, because to say it is one thing, but to not fully understand it is another. And then to be presented with that situation and actually live it out, you need to be clear about that. So how do you make that choice before it needs to be made and lived? Perspective. Look at someone that spent the life lived alone. If you can find them. If you don't have it, you don't have the proper perspective. If you only have your own point of view and you're assuming, then you don't have the perspective. You don't have the data to make that choice. You really don't. It's just a fact. You got a piece of data, you got your own, but you don't have enough of other perspectives to be like, oh yeah, I've seen X amount of people and they were okay with being alone, never talking to anyone else, never interacting with no one else, nothing, just them. Okay? That's just a suggestion. I ain't telling anyone what to do. This whole initiative that I'm doing, that we are doing at Us Versus Life, is about the recognition of that we're all here. And basically, in another way to put it, let's just make the best of it. Why not? Which I think we have done at times, we collectively, all of us, in different levels. Some have done it more than others. And for varying reasons. Again, levels proving themselves out to be. There's levels to everything. But we gotta make, at some point, as many of us that realize it, make this life as good as it can be for each other. And that's a choice to do that, which is what this video is about. It's highlighting the power of choice. So let's say, for example, you've been choosing to, let's just say, which think a lot of people individually tend to agree with, I've been doing everything right. Everybody else has been doing everything wrong. It ain't been me, it's been them, right? That's easy for a lot of people to accept. Well, you made that choice. Imagine if those people made the same choice to treat you the way that you feel you've been treating them, if it's been good. Imagine that scenario. That's what we need to work towards. And it's possible. And it happens. Not as much as we would like, not as much as we realize, because we're jaded, because we give up on it. But it is possible. And all we need is it to happen one person with a second person with third person, and etc. And it can happen in pairs. Two people doing it for each other, another two doing it with each other, two more doing it with each other, two pair of people choosing to do it with another pair of people, and it can build. And it happens, but it can happen a lot more. The day that we wake up and realize that we have all of the power on this earth, we being all of us, to choose how this life is, will be the greatest day in the history of human existence. But as long as we keep isolating ourselves to our own thinking and thinking that no one else wants what we want or is feeling what we are feeling, we will continue this cycle of a lot of good, a lot of good, a lot of bad, perhaps more good than bad. But on the scale of levels, we can have a lot more good than bad if we just realize we have the choice, the power. Let me ask you a question. Who else besides the human being controls this planet? Now, if you are out there and you say, oh, there's someone, something other than the human being in control of the earth, put it in the comments. But that aside, human beings run this world. And we are all human beings. Why shouldn't we choose to do something that would make this life better, not just for ourselves, but for everybody?